All right. Well, we are back for another episode of the Habit Shift podcast. So we're excited to be together as usual and talk about an area of health that and fitness that we think will be applicable to everybody. It's kind of we're picking up where we left off after the last episode. So if you didn't catch what was it, episode number 2, right?
Three.
That
was the third episode. But
that's right, man. Yeah. I'm losing track here. So the third episode. So if you haven't caught that episode, you may want to go back because that kind of is an introduction to the topic of what is health. And so today we're going to be picking up where we left off. So how are you guys all this morning?
Yeah, good. Thanks.
Good. Thank you.
That's very good. Well. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, good. I'm good to hear that because
How are you, Jeff?
I'm just waking up, as you might be able to tell from my riveting introduction to the podcast this morning.
It'll pick up.
Yeah. We'll get rolling here in a minute. So our topic today was basically the same kind of thing that we talked about last time. Last time we kind of went over 6 different facets of health and how health is much more than just the physical. And this time we were going to kind of pick up on that and talk a bit more about the practical aspects of it, kind of how we can apply and improve health in each one of these areas and maybe how they all tie together somewhat more at the practical level, how to actually do something about our health in these different areas. And because, I mean, ultimately it doesn't do us any good to just know about stuff. We want to find ways that we can actually implement it in our life. And of course, that's what each of us do when we're coaching clients. And so we thought we'd just share some insights about that with you all today. So sound good?
That sounds good, Jeff.
All right.
I'm ready.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Fired up.
We're in to go.
All right.
Cool.
Do we start with the easiest, then the physical?
Might as well. That's probably a good place to start.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about probably with the physical side of stuff, weight loss, weight management, body fat percentages, all of that sort of stuff that ties into that. Yeah?
And physical activity.
Y'all are nodding your head like this isn't a podcast.
Yeah.
I know people are watching. Like I get a narrator coming in. Jeff nods his head.
Yes.
In agreement with what Ian just said.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, we'll talk about obviously weight loss because a lot of people who probably listen to this are interested in that. And we did introduce like health and what our thoughts on health was last week. Or 2 weeks ago now. So looking at how do we manage people's health, physical side of it without negatively influencing any other area of it. And that's what I guess we're going to explore with that question.
Yeah. Well, I guess for starters, we don't choose any crappy, faddy methods and diets that you might see on the internet. So we don't go down the juice detox route or the what else is there? Slimming pills or carb free or keto or any of that stuff. We meet people where they're at. So wherever you're starting from, we will meet you at that point and then work with improving your kind of easiest things to start with.
Yeah, I guess it all starts with what a person's goals are and obviously what they value as well. Because we're trying to marry up all of this. We appreciate that they have physical goals, but like what is one person's freedom might be another person's restriction.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we're trying to figure out is how do we get this person to achieve their physical goals without contributing negatively to the other aspects of health, the emotional side, the social side, and so on and so forth. So this is why it's always challenging as a nutritionist and a coach to give like definitive answers because it always does depend on that person's overall goals and also, so if we call them like macro goals, that big picture goal, and then their micro goals, what are they doing there and then? How does it contribute negatively, positively? If they forego enjoying a certain situation, does that impact the long-term negative ability to adhere to said diet, so on and so forth. So you're absolutely right with the crash diet mentality, the almost, I call them desperation diets, and where that all stems from, really. And is that an emotional thing? Is it an escapism thing? Is it trying to like kind of, take no ownership and responsibility and do a certain thing? There's always that kind of like question mark I have when thinking about client and their practical methods that they use to manage weight.
I think that's the thing. I think the crash diet and the fad diet things, for one, marketing goes massively into that. So when someone's going to launch some kind of product or service or something, they're going to throw money at it. So they're going to make it look like it's going to be your one solution that you've waited for all this time. And I think with that is people buy into a quick fix because they think, oh, well, it's only short term, but they need to change that thinking to actually think that, a lot of the changes you make have to be, you can't expect to, especially if you've got physique goals of any description, you can't expect to just achieve that and then go back to where you were before, because you're not going to keep your physique to go with it. And it's the same with lifestyle goals. Yes, you can do short term, maybe cuts or to lose extra bits of weight, but your fundamentals are for life. And I think that's where people don't really get it, is that they see a quick fix diet and they go, oh yeah, I can do that for 6 weeks, but they forget that's just 6 weeks of their entire life, and you've actually got to be able to do something that you can sustain long term, not every part of it, because we know that you can do short term things that don't need to be sustainable, but your fundamentals do.
The fitness industry has a lot to answer for with this. They have made it look to people that it's just so easy and that it happens just, like that. And it just plays with people's minds, thinking that they can just get it done, really quickly. And when you've got a lot of weight to lose, they don't realize that it does take time, and sometimes a long time. You've really got to give yourself, to me, I reckon it's got to be at least 6 to 12 months when instead of, like, a lot of people just see the before and the after of photos and go, oh yeah, that doesn't take very long. And there's a lot more that goes with it as well, with those before and after photos, all the little bits in between that nobody sees.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is, when you start one of these sort of faddy diets, you're motivated because it's something new, and we know that new shiny gives you some motivation. So once that becomes too hard and you can no longer do it because most of them are unsustainable long term, then you look for the next quick fix, and then that becomes your motivation rises again because it's something new again. Whereas if you could just keep going with the normal habits longer term and be consistent, you wouldn't have to keep like falling on and off this, proverbial wagon that everyone talks about.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all know how hard maintenance is, and that a lot of people go into it with this mindset of, okay, yeah, I can suck it up and use willpower and determination, make it through this 12 weeks and get to this goal. And then they think that once it's done, then they're done with the diet. And the problem is that you can't, in order to sustain that, you have to continue doing something. You can't just go back to where you were. And so if in the process of getting to where you got, you didn't make any kind of changes in the way in how you eat and other factors in your life that can sustain where you got, then you're not going to be able to sustain that. And that's, of course, why we see so much weight regain in people, why it's so common for people to regain. What are the stats? It's, depending on who you talk to, it's 80-90% of people regain, and many regain and shoot past where they were.
Yeah.
And that's because of that. And I think a lot of that is that what we're talking about, we're talking about these different facets of health and how they tie in, because the approach that we take ties into all these other things, psychological, emotional, social. And when we take an approach like a fad diet or something, it often ignores those other areas, and it often becomes detrimental to those other areas. So it makes it, it kind of snowball.
Absolutely. Because if you've got, say, I don't know, a busy mum who wants to lose some weight, and you're now having to cook separate meals for yourself, you can't eat with your children are now seeing you drinking shakes or juices rather than eating real food. How can you keep that up long term, and how is that healthy for your family? It's all those things that I don't think people really give much thought to.
Yeah, and that's the challenging thing, especially I know Jeff works a lot with families and young children, is how does that impact the next generation? Like, we grew up in an age without social media, so children have access to these images and messages from a very early age, and basically telling them that they need to look and act and eat in a certain way. And I work with adults who are still confused and conflicted, and they have grown minds and brains fully developed. Well, some of them. And then, we've got children who are like struggling to kind of compute all of these hidden messages. And, we live in a society where looks matter, really. Like, we can't get away from that. And people judge people on what they look like. And that's going to contribute massively to a person's ideals in their head. And they're always striving for maybe this thing that just isn't, like, it isn't feasible, it isn't realistic. And that's why, again, we've got to look at so many aspects of a person's health. And it's like, we say, like, do no harm. We don't want to be that person who's almost supporting a disordered outlook towards their diet and things like that.
Yeah. I've had clients that, at first started with me, and, they're completely overhauling their lifestyle, if you like. And then they suddenly sort of go, oh, well, you kind of go, what are you doing at the weekend? And they say, oh, well, there's a party, but I'm not going to go because I can't manage that. I don't want to drink, or I don't want to do this, that, and the other. And that's not going to be sustainable either. I mean, that's detrimental to your social health and probably your emotional health, because why do you want to be sitting in at home when you could be out having fun? So, we try, and I think we're all the same, as we would try and get people to be able to attend these functions and still achieve their goals and not to feel guilty about them.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big reasons why so many of these diets fail, and that's because they impose these external restrictions on the person, these rules that they have to follow and these regulations, and it doesn't equip them to navigate these various other facets of health, these other areas that we're involved in. And so you find yourself when what do you do if you are dependent on a food scale and a calorie counting app, and that is the way that you restrain yourself and keep yourself on track? And now you go to a party where you have no idea what the calorie content is, or you go to a restaurant and you find that they don't have anything on the menu that is really super low calorie. So you're sitting there stressing over the fact that you don't have your food scale, wondering, is this 500 calories? Is it 700 calories? Is it 1,000 calories? What am I going to do? What should I log it as? How much protein is it? And we all know we've talked to people, we see them in groups stressing over those kinds of things. And when you have something like that, where you can't just go and enjoy the time and eat the food and drink the drink and then go home and wake up the next day and live your life, on another day, that can be detrimental. And, I think some of the research in the area of using things like MyFitnessPal, where there's some associations with the development of disordered eating and eating disorders for people that use that. And of course, not everybody. I mean, we know that some people can count calories perfectly fine and it's not an issue. I've done it myself. I didn't develop an eating disorder, but other people that can lead them down that path. And so, so now I'm getting off on a tangent here, but All that to say, that dieting that we were talking about in an attempt to address just that physical part of health can definitely impact those other areas.
Yeah, so I guess it sort of leads into then the psychological part of health as well, is just being able to learn how to make, better decisions so that you feel a bit more empowered. And that's what our job is to sort of help people, learn how to manage being. Well, I mean, we live in such a social world, we love going out and we love being with people. We love just eating out, and people need to learn how to manage their diets so that they can still include those things instead of, like Sarah was saying before, like instead of saying, I'm not going to go out because I'm on a diet. Well, you need to learn to manage your diet so you can enjoy a meal out without feeling bad about it or feeling guilty about it.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think with the way everything's going at the moment with almost it reverting, I mean, like if you go back in time, everything within the fitness industry and dieting and nutrition was very rigid. And now we've moved away from that. Do you think it's almost gone too far the other way, so that like sometimes people, almost like given free rein to do everything? And I mean, if you are somebody that eats out a lot, but you have goals to achieve, you do have to rein it in a little bit. It doesn't mean that you can't go out and enjoy yourself, but you probably have to be mindful on your decisions. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely think it has. And since I'm very involved in the intuitive eating space and in following that, if anybody follows that area on social media, you'll quickly see that a lot of the posts that, especially some of the younger people, it seems to be, who are just getting into it, they tend to focus on the I can eat whatever I want. Look at me, I'm eating donuts. Look at this. Don't tell me what I can't eat, and that. So there's almost an overreaction in that area, and in many cases, and I know that this isn't their intent, but in many cases, it almost reduces intuitive eating to just eat whatever you want, and that's just not what it is, and that's one area. And so I think that is one of the overreactions. It's kind of this response to heavy restriction, guilt around food, being told what is good and what's bad, what's healthy and unhealthy. And then the response is go to the other end and just say, I'm going to eat whatever I want. And often people get the impression anyway, that intuitive eating is about just eat whatever you want, without understanding that there's 10 specific principles that make up intuitive eating, and each one builds on it. One of them is unconditional permission to eat whatever you want in any quantity you want. But you don't just do that, because you'll get yourself in trouble if that's what you do. You work through these other steps and you start to discover, hey, why am I eating this? And once you work through those different principles, you don't want sugar all the time, because you're tuning into your body and finding out, well, when I eat sugar all the time, when I eat donuts all the time, I feel like garbage. And so, but the change is in that area. You're making the decision not to eat so many donuts because of how they make you feel, not because of a rule that tells you how much sugar you can have. So
that message do you think that message kind of goes out, and it's quite generalized, isn't it? Because when you're looking on social media, and I've noticed it even with other fitness professionals, it's all about, I'm eating a brownie today, or I've got ice cream, and it's almost, you don't see many people going, I'm eating a banana today, because somehow it's not putting that message out. But for people
that have the cheat meals, they're only showing the cheat meals that they have on the weekend, and all the hamburgers and chips and stuff that they're eating.
So it's sort of a fine line, isn't it, between getting the message across that you can go out for dinner and have whatever you want sometimes, but if you do it all the time, then you're not going to achieve your goal, are you? So one of the things I always say to my clients is, what's your main purpose for going out? Is it for the food, or is it to be social and to spend time with people? And if it's the social and the people, which for me it is, and the fact that maybe I don't have to cook, so I'm like, yay, someone else is going to cook. But I'm not massively food driven in that I've got to go to the menu and go, I'm going to have the biggest starter, a great big main course, a dessert, and a glass of wine. As long as I like what I'm eating, which boringly 9 times out of 10 is going to be chicken based, probably, I'll probably drink water because I like water and I'm not too keen on other like sweet drinks. And I'll probably have a main course and share a dessert with my hubby. And so a meal out for me doesn't have to be super calorific, but I can still enjoy myself and have a really nice time because it's a nice atmosphere. It's somewhere different. I'm with other people and it's not 100% food based. If, for example, I was going for an afternoon tea, that's different because most of the food on there is kind of very high calorie and you kind of can't really make, if you like, a nutritious choice on there. So then I might go, well, do you know what? I'm having an afternoon tea. I don't do this very often. I'm going to eat it and enjoy it. But I probably would think about what I ate the rest of my day as well. What about you guys when you go out?
Because it's quite...
Oh, sorry, Ian.
I was just going to say, because it's quite an infrequent thing for me, I enjoy it. Like I tend to overindulge, if you'd like, for that moment. But like, is it overindulgent on the grand scale of things? And usually, like, appetite the next day is very much lowered and stuff like that. So it kind of auto regulates over the next few days, but there's not like an emotional response where it's like, right, I need to cut out foods. But of course, I am mindful that, hey, I'm going out tonight or I'm going out later in the week. So, I'm going to factor that in some sort of way. But it's, as you said, it's always like kind of feel like we're walking this tightrope between like what is disordered, what isn't disordered, and what people's views are. And it should be like, oh, you don't need to do this and that. But if you want something, you may have to forego certain things. If you're saving up for something like financially, you might have to not like go out and spend a lot of money on these little things that give you this kind of immediate gratification. You saving up and getting the big thing that you really want after however long is something that we need to be kind of mindful of. And I think if a lot of people are just driven by like short-term, like pleasure dopamine hits, that they might struggle with reaching that long-term goal. I mean, we are talking about like an organism. And I think a lot of people forget that there's always like a kickback from a biological and psychological perspective. So we're trying to minimize any of that. We're trying to manage satiety as best as possible. Also manage a person's psychology and, get them to understand how they can still go out and eat food and they can still have a chocolate bar a day or like, do the things that they really enjoy, but they maybe are in this position where they don't see how they can enjoy the food that they enjoy and also like get in shape and be healthy, because their associations between the two, they just can't see them blending together.
Andy, go on, you had something to say there.
I was just going to say, like society has changed. Like when you were saying before about how it was, many years ago, the food that was available then isn't like it is now. And even with restaurants, everything is getting supersized and, they're adding just more and more stuff. I don't know what it's like in your countries, but here, when you go out to the pub or to a restaurant, it's either deep fried, it's always with chips, and it's either that or they go the opposite extreme and it's a salad. There's nothing sort of in between. It's just like society has made us fatter, really, because they've just added more and more stuff for us to have a choice. And yeah, I just think that, I mean, people abuse it a little bit too, don't they? By just going out all the time. And sometimes you've just got to cut it back a little bit, especially if you have a goal to reach. And it's sort of a bit like that. Oh. And I always have that, that the flexibility part of it, it's a bit like 80% of the time, you're eating wholesome, foods like lean sources of protein, lots of fruit and veg, but the other 20% of the time, you're having that fun stuff.
I think that's it. And I was going to just pick up on what Ian said, because he made some points there. One, he doesn't eat out very often. So when he does, then why would he need to worry? Because it's not a everyday event. And also, our favourite word, or phrase you will hear all the time, is "it depends." For him, he's already in shape. He's not trying to lose weight. He eats a great diet the rest of the time. So if you put all those together, when he goes out to eat, if he wants a bit of a blowout, then it's not going to make any difference to him. But if you're somebody that's got, I don't know, a goal of weight loss, and you've got 20, 30 pounds you want to lose, and you're eating out every week, then you can't go down the same route necessarily as Ian, not at every single meal. Maybe occasionally you can, but you've still got to be mindful then of, well, do I want to have a blowout every time I go out, or do I want to achieve my goals? And the two aren't going to meet, not every time.
Yeah, I'm the same as Ian. I don't go out very often as well. So when I do go out, I like to enjoy myself, but I'm also a little bit sensible, if you want to call it that. But I think what has happened too is what was once a treat to go out and eat out has just fast become something of, something that people do nearly every single day, or, at least 3 to 4 times, 5 to 6 to 7 times a week. And for me to go out, it's a treat. So yeah, when I do go out, I'm like Ian, I have what I want and I enjoy myself, but I don't go stupid.
I guess it's, for me, it's like, what is normal? And like, my normal is my normal, and it provides me the life that I want to live. And like, if I go on holiday for an all-inclusive fortnight, I'm going to come back carrying a bit more body fat, and I'm okay with that. Yeah, a bit of timber, but I'm not coming back. I just return to normal and find like your body just kind of settles down, because it settles back into what it was. So like, usually pre-holiday anyway, I'm not like dieting, because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm trying to get in shape for holiday, only to like kind of go up to an all-inclusive place with maybe all the negative like physiology and psychology that dieting brings, and then be let loose. That's kind of like what they do when they do a crash diet. It's like, oh, I can't wait for this diet to be over. And it's like, oh God, like, and we just know that's rebound city. And we've got like hyperplasia, like the accumulation of extra body fat cells off the back of just very fast and rapid fat regain. And as we know, fat cells, they either shrink or grow. They can't be removed unless it's through surgery. So like, we just got that's the thing. Like, I haven't had like a cheat meal in like, God, 10 years. And people be like, oh, you haven't had a cheat meal, or who are you? And it's like, well, yeah, I have pizzas every Friday night. It's like, everything is inclusive into the diet. Everything is like part of the diet. And, I come from a background of like, very early years, clean eating was the thing. And then kind of, if it fits your macros, came along going, hey, you can eat these foods and incorporate into your nutrition. And that was like, right, okay, then you can still do that without tracking calories. You can still regulate calories appropriately. We can have a staggered approach to our nutrition. You're not eating the same amount every day. You're not expending the same amount every day. So you base your decisions on a bit like intuition and like informant. But that takes time and practice, which I've got a lot of and made a lot of mistakes. And I guess like a lot of people want things in a black and white format that literally just tells them what they need to do when they need to do it, i.e. a meal plan. Do you do meal plans? How many times have we heard that? and then, you get a message, do you do meal plans? And the answer is like, you can go to this website and they'll do you the meal plan, but you're not going to stick to it because it's not teaching you anything. It's not addressing the core issues that you do not have control. And you're looking for things to give you the illusion of control. And true control is making decisions based on numerous things that's going on. And like saying, yeah, I'm gonna eat a lot. And that being okay because fine well, it's gonna have little to no impact. And I think I said it on your other podcast, Jeff, the turn what should have been a drop in the ocean into a massive tsunami. And that's what it is. It's a blip on a radar and it ends up in this like huge emotional response.
Yeah, I mean, that just emphasizes Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
Oh,
I was just going to say that's mindset, though, isn't it? A little bit where, like I said, I'm quite happy to drink water. I actually enjoy water, so that isn't I'm not making a compromise that I'm miserable with, if that makes sense. So that to me is just a standard thing. I don't sit there all night thinking, I wish I'd had wine, or they're having wine and oh, poor me. That's not what it's about. And I think your mindset when you go out and make your choices, if you feel like you're being hard done by, then you're going to struggle. Whereas if you're going to go out and make your choices and be quite happy and content with them, which I think is probably what we all do because we're very used to doing it. And I think maybe other people maybe struggle with a little bit because it isn't new to them and they sometimes feel that they can't, they want to have everything that they want. But I think, we're talking about people that have got a goal and not just generally across the board. So that was just my point. Sorry, Jeff, I cut.
No, that was great because that kind of leads in well with what kind of the point that I was going to make about the psychological and emotional side of health and how I think that's a big part of what you were talking about there. When we're addressing like diets and so forth, they sort of ignore that to a degree, give you the rigid rules. But when you start to address the psychological issues, the emotional issues, why is it that you're eating in the way that you are? Why are you turning to food to try and meet this emotional need and really start to dig down into those? Then you can start to address these issues to where you're making your choices not because the diet told you that you should be eating this or that, but you're making the choice because that's actually what sounds good to you and what ultimately is making your body feel good, and that's one of the big areas of in intuitive eating and the approach that I use with children is that it's not about saying eat what you want. It's about really tuning in and figuring out, well, what is it that I really want? What is it that I really need? Am I actually hungry? Well, if I'm actually hungry, I should probably feed myself. But am I bored? Am I wanting to eat because I'm bored? Am I wanting to eat in response to a bad day at work? And I'm looking for comfort in the food. Well, sometimes that's okay. But if that's the only coping mechanism that you have, then it's probably a good idea to start looking for other ways of coping with those difficulties in your life. And when you start to do that, and when you really start to unpack those things and deal with those issues, then you find that the nutrition stuff actually falls into place much easier. And that's why, there's different approaches to take for all of this, but that's one of the reasons that I think that I have really found that approach to be really helpful and beneficial for a lot of people. And is you're going down to the root of the issue instead of addressing the body fat by trying to shrink it. You're saying, okay, well, if you're bigger than you should be, genetically, we all know that everybody's going to be a little bit different size. If you're bigger than you should be, if your child has suddenly gone from, a certain body composition to a significantly different one, either up or down, it's like, well, what happened? What happened there that caused that? Why are things different now? So COVID's kind of a really easy example. People who put on 30 or 40 pounds over COVID, and that's not normal for them. They were cruising along, no problem, not even really thinking about it. COVID hit, they put on 40 pounds. And now the immediate response is, oh, I got to go on a diet and get this weight off. And it's like, well, no, that approach, yes, you might get the weight off, but really what you want to do is address the issues that popped up during COVID. Was it loneliness? Was it lack of access to good quality food? What is it that changed? Address that, and then often things will come back into play. And that's what happens with kids a lot too. Where did that spike come from in your kid's weight? Oh, it happened to be when mom and dad got divorced, or when we found out that the child had been being abused, or dad lost his job and now there's a lot of food insecurity in the house, and whatever the case may be. And so again, that ties back in nicely to the psychological and the emotional facets of health. Is we can often address the physical by fixing or addressing or working on those other areas of health.
So have we got any top tips for these? Because we've kind of done physical, emotional, psychological kind of all together, really. Has anyone got any sort of practical top tips that they can give people for addressing these areas?
I think it ties into the educational side of it too. Is like, you are your own little kind of experiment, if you'd like. And I think when people think of educational, they may be thinking about courses and all of this, but like, we have to learn what really works for you. And it's all well and good having all this knowledge, but if you don't have any actual practical, actionable stuff that you can do consistently, then all the knowledge in the world isn't going to help you. Mm-hmm. And like, you only need to know what you need to know. Like, you don't need to know crazy details within nutrition. I'm not even clever enough to do all of that, and like, at the end of the day, I'm here to help people, not like impress people by trying to sound clever and complicated. So I guess for me, it is just kind of like trying to create that structure and trying to have, like, I guess, a baseline plan, and not to be too rigid with it, and keep going back to the drawing board and be willing to do that and be willing to fail and make mistakes. And essentially that's what coaching is. It's kind of like, right, we're going to try this. We're going to focus on what we call the low-hanging fruit, or the big rocks. And then we're going to kind of refine that. And as we go along, we'll start maybe adding little things and tailoring it and tweaking it and getting it to a position where you are like able to manage it, and also manage things when there is a curveball every now and then in life, and be able to think about the grand scheme of things.
Andy, what about you?
I think my biggest advice is, because I see a lot of people rush it. They go, oh, I'm going to go on a diet, and they, go out to the supermarket and they pile all this healthy stuff into the trolley. And, I'm all set for the week, and, it lasts a week and then it all dwindles away, and, they go back to the way they were before. So I would say, not to rush it, and just give yourself some time. And that's where a bit of planning, like Ian just touched on, is just having a bit more of a plan of, what you're going to do, and not rush it, because it does take time. It takes time to learn stuff. It takes time definitely to change habits, because essentially what we're doing is changing habits. So, and that doesn't happen, in a week or month. It's going to take a lot of time sometimes, and maybe not even at all. It might come and go. So, yeah, definitely not to rush it, and make it more about being a long-term thing rather than just a short-term, quick fix, and learning how to change habits along the way.
Really good.
Everyone's nodding.
Yeah.
Really good. Jeff, have you got anything? Any top tips?
Yeah, the main one that I tend to use and tend to recommend is not jumping full on into making changes to the foods that you're eating. So I think that's one of the responses that a lot of people do is, okay, I'm having issues with my health. I got to figure out what I need to cut out, what I need to add in, and so we address the food, the specific thing that we're eating. We do it with our kids. Okay, I got to get this. My kids are eating too much sugar. I need to cut the sugar out. So we address it through a restrictive mindset, rather than saying, again, coming back to what I was talking about earlier, which is the reason that you're eating too much fast food and sugar is probably not because because it's there. There's probably something else there. A good example was a client recently who we were working through hunger signals and identifying those things and talking about the structure of her day. And what she was finding was she wasn't feeding herself well throughout the day. And so on the way home from work, she might stop off and grab a burger at McDonald's, which she didn't even really like. I mean, it was okay, but by the time it was the end of the day, she was so hungry that she just needed something. And so that was what she stopped off for. Well, we addressed it by looking at how she was eating throughout the day. We didn't cut anything out. I didn't tell her, well, stop stopping at McDonald's, and why don't you stop at this place, Subway, go to Subway instead, or take a bag of veggie sticks or whatever. So we didn't do that. We just addressed, well, why are you so hungry at the end of the day? You shouldn't be starving ever, really. And so when we addressed that just fell into place. So we didn't have to go in and say, okay, McDonald's only once a week, or cut this out, cut that out. And when you do that, then now you're addressing the how you're thinking about things, how you're feeding yourself, and you're not heaping guilt on yourself. You're not putting a rule or a restriction in place. It just kind of naturally falls into place once you address the core issue, which was not feeding yourself. So long story short, my tip is don't immediately try and jump in and start cutting things out, because I think all of us can agree that it just doesn't work long term when you start cutting things out, because often you're cutting out things that were perfectly good. Carbs, as an example. Oh, I need to quit eating bread. And we've looked at some of these studies where people who eat bread regularly and cut it out, it actually has a detrimental effect on their diet, not a positive one. And or you start cutting out carbs without realizing, well, carbs are a great way of knocking your appetite and adding satiety very quickly. And so if you're really hungry and you're eating carbs, it actually hits your satiety signals relatively rapidly. It's not as sustaining, and so that's why we say, hey, add in protein and fat too. But again, you start cutting out things, and now it starts impacting and trickling down to these other areas. So physical, emotional, and psychological when you start that. So anyway, that's my long way of saying my short tip.
No, that's really good. And I guess don't cut out, but readdress the balance, isn't it? So if you are overeating carbs, then don't cut them out, but just readdress the balance. I think all three of you there had absolutely awesome tips. So I'm just going to go slightly different, because I think you've covered so many there between you. But I would just say, when you are looking to make changes, you need to make something that is suitable for you, and not what your best mate is doing, what your mum did, what your friend or work colleague has done, and not what your favourite influencer on social media is doing, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be doing something to make money, and it probably won't work for them. And what might have worked for your friend might well have worked because their lifestyle is very different to yours. So find something that's appropriate for you and not somebody else. And if you need help in doing that, then obviously find somebody like one of us, amazing people. Little plug there.
I think we've always got to define the word worked, and I think Sandy said it before. You see a before and after picture, but you rarely see the after picture.
Yeah.
And like, again, we've got to look at the long term negative impact of that, because nobody wants to lose the weight and regain it. And and the thought of having to do another diet, and if they've got like a history of dieting, some people decades worth, like each time they start it, they're maybe already starting with that kind of like, they start questioning themselves. Maybe I'm meant to be fat. Maybe it's my metabolism. Maybe it's me. All of this sort of stuff. So like, you got to kind of like, going into these practical tips is like, it does depend on a person's history. Like I've worked with some people and it's just like a duck to water. They're just like bang all of a sudden. And then there's some people who are a struggle. And that's what people forget, that they are actually like a unique person. They're drawn comparison to like their friends, social media. They did this, they did that, but this guy's doing this and all of this sort of stuff. And again, they're not looking at themselves, they're looking at other people, and they're not like educating themselves in the right positive way. And they're not learning by doing. They're just kind of confusing themselves with learning all of this kind of stuff that just doesn't apply to them. And I think for me, one of the biggest lessons I've learned over my years is learning how to learn, and learning how to like yes, listen to stuff, but objectively go, well, it's nice to know and having that underpinning knowledge, but how does it practically apply? Does it practically apply? Full stop. And it's always good. We have an evidence-based culture and always throwing studies at one another, but they forget about adherence and sustainability and all of this sort of stuff. So, what works then and there, it's like, right, does it work? And I'm talking 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the line. Do they have them core like principles and that education around themselves to be able to move the goalposts given life's events? Because we work with people, adults who are busy, professionals, parents, all of that sort of stuff, and like time's a huge factor for them, and that's a big thing, like eating on the go, all of that sort of stuff. So like me, Ian Bickle, young bodybuilder without anything to worry about, versus now I've still got to meet the principles of energy balance and all of that sort of stuff, but there's now all of these other factors that I've got to kind of work with at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. So which have we not covered? What have we got left to cover?
I guess the financial, I think.
Yeah, because I think you covered the intellectual there good. I think just knowing a little bit about your, how food impacts you and how it works in general, fiber, what it does, if you need to poop more, those kinds of things. And so, I think those are good. But the economic one is interesting too, because I think that's an area that often people overlook. And there's something called the food scarcity and obesity paradox, which is really interesting because we know that people who have less access to food, that there is a higher prevalence of issues in and around food, and it's because of food insecurity. You'd almost think it'd be the opposite, right? You don't have access to food for economic factors, and so you would struggle to maintain body weight. But it's actually the opposite.
It's an interesting topic, this one, because that one could be a whole topic on itself. We could easily talk about that a lot. And I think, from the financial point of view, you've got like an everyday kind of, people's got their income and what they can afford to spend on things. So, don't waste your money on supplements you don't need, again, because you've seen someone else take them. Don't buy into the faddy, expensive juice diet that you can only keep up for 2 weeks. But and I don't want this to sound like a plug again because it's not meant to, but if you look across your lifetime of how much you've spent on your goals, like health and fitness, whether it's gyms you've joined, whether it's plans you've done and failed at, or slimming clubs you've joined over and over again, you know, the one thing about working with people that can actually help you as an individual is that you might think it feels expensive at the time, but if you put it into your lifetime of what you might have spent otherwise, it can actually be a really cost effective, cost money saving thing to do. And I don't mean that to come across like, you know, oh, we just want you to work with us, but it's just opening your minds to think, well, actually, how much have I spent on Slim and World for like 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you wouldn't have to work with somebody like us for that amount of time, because we would hope to get you where you want to be in a hell of a lot less time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's one of the things that I think a lot of people overlook is, you know, they're willing to jump in and add in those supplements, go buying all these organic foods, changing up all their diet, spending a lot more money on food that maybe they don't even particularly enjoy, and doing all of the jumping through all these hoops. And when, you know, you can get that guidance, get pointed in the right direction. And a good example is I had a client recently, and I kind of talked with you guys about it. We worked together for a couple of months. We worked through some issues where she was struggling, and after a couple months, we both were sitting there like, I don't really have much else to offer. What else are you struggling with? I'm not, you know, we dialed in those few things, and I think I'm good. And it was a bummer to see this person go, because I really enjoyed our sessions, but it was, you know, we kind of resolved those, and she may come back later. Who knows? Maybe not. But it was exciting to see that. And it's exciting to see when you actually can help someone get past all of the nonsense that they've been dealing with for that extended period of time by just addressing what they really needed help with.
Yeah, I think our best business cards are people who you've had success with in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years down the line. They are at a social event or at a party, and they're partaking in normal behaviors, and like they are lean, they are like happy. And you know, people will often question like, oh, how are you able to do that and stay in shape and all of that sort of stuff. And that's what I want people to ask my clients. And they'll start getting a bit like, oh God, that question again, or should you be drinking and all of that. That's what I get, because obviously I have the identity of being health and fitness and nutritionist. And it's like, if you're in a party and someone asks you what you do, and you're like, oh, I'm a nutritionist, you know, like it's like, oh,
you got a drink and a cake in one hand
at the table. Ian's a nutritionist. Everyone, put down your buffet. I'm getting sat, and you're like, God's sake, man. But at the end of the day, like, we want people to be able to have a social event, go to a social event, and you know, talking about like financial, as you mentioned, the amount of money that they spend and the amount of money they're willing to spend. Like, I've worked with clients and in actual fact saved their money whilst working with me. Like, if they are, for example, eating out multiple times per week, you know, 4 or 5 takeaways a week, you know, 20, 25 pounds, not sure of the conversions, guys, sorry. You know, but like spending that amount, you know, in a week could be like what we charge a month. And obviously, we're not just there to control them, we're there to educate them, support them, give them a bit of accountability, and so on and so forth. Like, at the end of the day, like, we're trying to have this short-term period where we're working with someone relative to their life, and for them to be able to like go away and like, yeah, there's not much to this, is there? You know, like in terms of getting the basics down. And yeah, there is a lot of specificity that other coaches might go into. Like, if you want a like the bodybuilding coach, usually like you've got to have some amazing foundations in place to go to that next level thing. But it all should stem from foundations. And I know of coaches who are top bodybuilding coaches, and they're just it's almost contributing to the problem as well. Like, these people who have got these amazing reputations and are seen as like heavy influences. Like people don't know, or they don't assume that these people are kind of effectively maybe contributing to the problem as well.
One of the things just reminded me when you said, like you're at a function or whatever, and people are like, oh, should you be eating that? Like, I guess you probably all heard it too, but I have heard so many times somebody will refer to a friend of theirs or something, and they'll go, oh, they can eat whatever they like and they stay skinny, and it's just so unfair. And you go, well, what do you mean? Oh, well, they were eating a burger last night and they're just so skinny, they can just eat whatever they like. And you kind of go, well, you've only seen them eat one burger. What did they have for breakfast? How active are they? What else have they done? You see a tiny snapshot. And bottom line is if they are a weight that is ideal for them, they aren't overeating, even if they are eating a burger at some point in time. And if I had a pound for every time I've heard that, I could retire.
Mm-hmm. I think as well, if we take a little bit of a dark path, they don't know if that person who ate that burger 20 minutes later made themselves sick in the toilet. Like, like you don't know if they're battling a disorder, they've got bulimia or something like that. We all just see what we see. Nobody digs a little bit deeper. We had the whole hashtag be kind, but like everybody's so reactive to what they just see there and then, and they never stop and think and never maybe just ask a question. Like, and like actually get to know someone and look in their eyes and listen to them and, dig a little deeper. So, it's always, God, you get to eat that. But people don't know that that person might be battling so much and, maybe they're trying to gain weight.
Yeah.
They've come from like the other extreme, because everybody's bothered about like obesity and they see skinny as healthy. And like, it's like that person now has ate that burger, but the next day they're doing 6 hours of cardio and like restricting the calories for the rest of the week. And it's just like, is that healthy? But the skinny, it's like, we've got everything like back to front. And that's why health is so multifaceted. And we can't just look at somebody on a surface level and go, they're healthy, and look at someone. I like another little tangent here. When you're on holiday and you see the Germans or like the foreigners and they're massively overweight, but they're wearing tiny little budgie smugglers and they just don't give a shit. They don't care. And you're just like, oh, I wish I had a bit of what they had. I wish I had that level of confidence, like just to not give a shit. Is it like the healthiest thing to do? And it's like, well, who are we to judge? Like if they're happy, nobody's body is my business unless they make it my business. And I would rather somebody, if they want to lose 2-3 stone, I'd rather them, lose a stone and just have that balance in their life. And we know the data on people losing like 5-10% of their body weight significantly improves health markers. And like people in their own head are always going to be disappointed. They always got the ideal in the head. And when they lose the stone, I always want to lose the next stone. And then when they've hit their target weight, they'll be like, yeah, but I want these biceps or these abs. And I'm just like, when's it going to stop? When are you going to be, quote unquote, happy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
God, sorry about that. I went on when there.
He went on a bit of banter there.
Yeah. But yeah, I think how long we've been going?
Hour.
Nearly an hour.
Yeah.
God, I think we'll have to tie things up. I think we've got like so many more topics, and I think everything that we're going to do moving forward is going to feed into these facets of health. And there's individual points that we can kind of do full podcasts on there. And I think if we keep going, we'll just be here all day. Sandy, it's bedtime. Jeff, it's daytime.
Breakfast time.
Yeah, exactly. We've got to get our lunch, So yeah, I think besides that, does anyone have anything short to add?
I just feel sorry for that person with the burger now.
What do you think, haven't I? I've made you think.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that it's just as another reminder, just don't neglect any of these facets of health. find ways to nurture each one of them, because they tie in so tightly to everything. I mean, the food choices you make are tied into your social, your intellectual, your psychological and emotional, and then those all feed off of each other, and how you think about your food and how you think about nutrition and all of that. And I think that, again, not to keep pushing each one of our services, but that's something that is often can really be helped and addressed by someone who is looking in from the outside, from a much more disconnected perspective, where we're not tied up in all of your family drama, your life drama, things going on there. We can look at it much more objectively and help identify some of those areas, and then work together to really find ways that you can address those specific areas that actually need addressing. Like, you probably don't need to start eating organic if you're, that's probably not the answer to your diet. There's probably something else in one of these other facets that could be addressed and really help you make that progress that you're looking for.
Sandy?
Yes. I don't really have anything else to add. I guess I think people do need to stop comparing themselves to other people. I mean, even for me, I went through the supermarket, through the checkout one day, and the lady says to me, "How do you look so good? Like, what do you do? Are you a runner?" And I was like, "No, I don't run." She goes, well, do you play tennis? And I was like, "No." And she said, "Well, do you, I don't know," she rattled off all these different things, and they were all cardio. And then she goes, "Well, what do you do then?" And I said, "Well, I lift weights." And she goes, "Oh." So, yeah, it's funny how people look at you and just, they don't see anything else. And I've gotten that all my life too, is because I'm thin, they just think I don't need to go to the gym, and I don't need to, I can eat what I want. Yeah, no, it doesn't work like that, I'm afraid.
No, you look like you do because you eat well and go to the gym.
Yeah, exactly.
And put the work in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I guess, like, to leave it, people do have to put work in, but it's relative to the position that they're starting from. So it is like, what's challenging for them might not be challenging to someone else. So you just have to, like, kind of, as you've said, not draw comparison, just kind of start with you where you're at, and go from there. And people are absolutely capable of doing it themselves. They've got this podcast, which will be, hopefully hugely insightful. There's other podcasts out there as well. Yes, there is the ability to work with someone one-to-one, but, my take-home points would be just, like, think a little deeper, and, question things, and even yourself, like keeping journals and all of that sort of stuff is hugely practical for a lot of people. But that's my end. But yeah, I think if we're happy there, I think people should go follow us on Instagram, The Habit Shift. Search The Habit Shift on Facebook, and we have a little group that we will be posting in regular. If you do have any questions, any topics that you'd like us to cover. But yeah, besides that, I want to say a huge thank you to people listening, Jeff, Sarah, Sandy, and we will catch people next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.